time and space. Everywhere and anywhere, every star that ever was. Where do you want to start?
Merry Christmas and welcome to All of Time and Space.
We're a Doctor Who podcast, but probably not the one you were expecting.
You're right, Ian, you've gone a bit Welsh.
That's what he sounds like. He's got that lilt.
He?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, we're doing Paul McGann.
Yeah. Remember
right.
we said that I could do my impression of Paul McGann.
Yeah.
Can we
He's
just move?
Ian, he's from Liverpool.
Just move on. Just move on to the next bit. Just move on.
Okay. Yeah. So, this is an extra little bonusy podcast that we thought we'd chuck your way just to keep you entertained over the Christmas period.
Can I shout out Merry Christmas?
Go on, Em.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Shall we raise our glasses?
Oh, can do. Have you got some festive nog?
I've got a cup of tea.
Yeah,
that's quite festive.
It's not though, is it? Because I mean, you could be having that at sort of 5 o'clock in the morning. Though you should be on the advert car like what I've been since lunchtime.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Best not to talk about it. I've set fire to the turkey. But we're here for a little special Christmas bit of nonsense. So it's a good time, I suppose, really, to just quickly think back about everything that's happened this year. I mean, not everything that's happened this year. It's been terrible.
No, that would be awful. Don't do that.
But all the Doctor Who things, all the Doctor Who things that have happened this year, we could talk about those just quickly, just in passing.
All right. Okay. And don't forget, coming up later, we've got a special guest as well.
Have we? Oh, how exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, no one tells me anything. They just said...
It's the main man from Momo Tempo. It's Mr. Timo Peach.
Mr. Timo Peach? Oh.
Yeah, that's the one.
Oh, how wonderful. Well, that's something to look forward to. We better get our bit out of the way really quite quickly so that the listeners can enjoy the chat with the urbane, interesting guest as opposed to us.
The two old duffers.
Yeah.
All right, then. Yeah, so 2020.
Yeah, so I've got written down here that the year began on the 1st of January with season something of a show called Doctor Who. I want to say season 12, but I've lost count, to be honest.
I'm pretty sure, it was season
12.
Season 12?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
And did you enjoy season 12 of Doctor Who?
I think I definitely enjoyed it more than season 11.
That's good. That's great. I also enjoyed
it's like the Sylvester McCoy effect. First series was a bit... And the series after that, you think, this is getting better.
If only season 24 was widely regarded as being a bit because that's very generous. Yes, well, I know what you mean, though.
Talking to someone who likes season 17, so...
Yeah. I don't know that anything in season 12 really rose to the heights of Remembrance of the Daleks, but yeah, it was certainly a very definite kind of gear change from where season 11 had been in terms of like the just the kind of scale of it and the level of it and the tone. It was just a lot more big and exciting and kind of wow.
Yeah. It definitely had a wow factor.
It did have
which I felt was a bit lacking in the season before. It was not offensive. It was not terrible, but it wasn't amazing. It was just kind of there, really.
It was. I mean, I was underwhelmed. My whelm was under. Whereas with this new season, I was
whelmed.
I was whelmed. Yeah, I wasn't over. Well, at times I was overwhelmed. Sometimes I was just whelmed. There was general whelmage, which is, I think, all you can hopeful. What looking back on the year as a whole, I think it's really unfortunate that because I think the season finished about a week before the country went into lockdown, and if only they'd waited to start broadcasting in sort of April the way they used to, then the ratings for this series would have been absolutely off the charts, because no one would have had literally anything else to do.
Yes, but the ne'er-do-wells would be very quick to point that out, so, you can't win.
That's very true. What was your, if you had to pick one story from this year's season, which one would you take with you to a desert island of Doctor Who episodes?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think there were a couple that are very memorable to me. The Haunting of Villa Diodati was, I thought, tremendous fun, because the BBC are doing what they do so very well, which is those fantastic sort of period dramas with a sci-fi twist. So that was fun. I thought the cast were really good, and it was just a fun, exciting romp. And I guess the other really obvious one was Fugitive of the Judoon, because we get that super duper epic reveal, which pleased some people and didn't please others, I think, would be fair to say.
Yeah, that's another one of those understatements, isn't it? It hath been divisive, I would say. But I think
I thought it was just, it blew my mind at the time, and after feeling like the previous season had been a little bit lackluster, I think, as you say, really went to town and really pulled out all the stops.
I think it's really brave, and I don't want to sit here and come across like some kind of massive Chris Chibnall apologist or fanboy, because I'm really not. But I think he had the opportunity to do something that would fundamentally change the show and develop it and move it on. People talk about Barry Letts and Terrence Dicks and how they kind of invented things and kind of created the show that we now know and love. And I think what Chibnall did with creating this kind of backstory for the Doctor has again moved it on. Otherwise, you just got another 5, 10, 20 years of the same thing happening week in, week out. So I think he's, in that episode, he's kind of thought, no, right, let's do it. Let's change the mythology. And whether you like it or not, whether you're on Twitter or not, it was a really brave thing to do. I can't think of anything that Russell T Davies or even the Lord R. Stephen of Moffat did that really shook things up in quite that bold a fashion.
No, I think it still leaves a bit of wiggle room for someone later down the line to change it up and go in a different direction if they want to. I don't suppose we really know the full fallout of that particular story arc until we've seen the series that's currently in production as we record this.
Well, I don't know. Maybe the clever thing to do is just never mention it again now, and Chibnall can say, like the Eighth Doctor being half human, it's there if somebody else wants to run with it, or you can forget about it. Either way, it's a thing that happened, which is all you can really say.
And while we're recording this in mid-December, we haven't yet seen Revolution of the Daleks, so that's something else to look forward to.
Yes, that's on New Year's Day, isn't it?
That's right, yes.
So why do you think they've shunted them to New Year's Day instead of good old-fashioned Christmas Day?
I don't know. I suppose it's in keeping with the whole thing of moving it from a Saturday to a Sunday, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, actually,
TV viewing habits have changed.
Yeah, it could be that. I mean, the Sunday night thing was a good idea. The New Year's Day, I suppose it is more... There's a little, there's a tiny psychological benefit. If something happens a week before New Year's Day, then by January the 2nd, it feels like an old thing that happened last year, and whereas if you trot out something new on New Year's Day, then it feels current for much further into next year.
There you go. That's Doctor Who covered for all of 2021.
Yeah. Well, they're going to film some, but I think with the COVID restrictions, it's going to take them about a year to film one episode.
Their release rate is going to be almost as quick as ours.
So are you looking forward to seeing the Daleks again?
Yes, I am. I'm intrigued as to how they get their sort of revamped shape. I think they look pretty cool, to be honest.
You're a fan.
The odd photo.
You're a fan of the...
I am, yeah.
Interesting.
Change is good, Iain.
Yeah, but you're a Doctor Who fan, so we're not allowed to think that. Everything has to stay exactly the same, apart from grudgingly, exactly. You can change the lead actor every 3 years.
As long as it's not one of those damn women.
No, gosh. So now that...
They'll be calling it nursery next.
Yes, not my mother. Anyway, so now that we've outed ourselves as the Statler and Waldorf of podcasting.
Oh, God. Well, we're old enough.
Did you have any other sort of Doctor Who-y stuff from 2020? I read 2 of the books, which I didn't think were particularly brilliant, if I'm being honest. Maybe I'll go no further. But yes, they're not what they were.
Well, I've been enjoying the Blu-ray releases.
Oh,
so I make a point of pre-ordering those when I find out there's a new one coming out. So I'm trying to rack my memory to remember which ones came out.
Because that was going to be my question: is which ones did come out in 2020? Did season 26 come out?
I think it did.
Excellent.
I think it did, yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much the best series, isn't it, really?
Of the McCoy years, yes.
Of the classic years?
Not sure I can agree with you completely there. Oh, there are some great stories in there.
Attention, listeners, at this point we have reached a schism in the world of Doctor Who podcasting, and this may then be our final broadcast. Surely there were...
Yes, it's been lovely.
There were more than one though, right? Oh, did season 14 maybe? Was that this year?
Yes, that was a recent one, wasn't it?
I'm really the wrong person to ask you. So we've got a kind of classic Hinchcliffe era 26 episode, massively well-loved series of Doctor Who. And we've got season 26, the tail end of the McCoy era. 2 series, which I think you'll agree are quite different and quite differently regarded by people. But I think both represent...
I think that's fair to say.
Both represent a real high watermark for fans of that era. I mean, I would take season 26 over season 14. We're still in the schism, aren't we? Sorry.
I mean, we've each their own. I'm a firm believer that everyone... That's what I love about the whole thing with the Doctor Who fandom. Everyone has their favourites, and that's as it should be.
Exactly.
When you've got getting on for 60 years worth of stories to choose from, I think that's just great that everyone has their own particular favourites.
Yeah, I mean, we've had what, 63 Doctors at this point, and who are we to say which one people should like more than all the rest of them, or who is the least favourite of all of those Doctors? I wonder who that could be.
Colin. Anyway,
yes.
Moving on.
So, so that's where we are. And then the other thing about the Christmas special I've just remembered is that John Barrowman is in it.
Oh, yes.
Do you have an opinion?
Not really a huge Captain Jack fan. He's okay. I mean, I've got the Torture box set, apart from the terrible Miracle Day. That was awful.
Oh.
So, obviously, I like him enough to have bought that.
Fair enough.
But, I didn't get quite as excited as some of my friends in the Twitter sphere.
Well, again, it's one of those things, isn't it? We're a broad well, we should aspire to be a broad church in Doctor Who fandom, and everyone has their era, everyone has their favourite bits, everyone has their favourite characters, and for the thousands of Captain Jack fans, this is going to be the best thing since Fugitive of the Jadoon.
Now it's nice that we have these little callbacks to the old characters.
Yeah, it does. It does kind of unify the new era of the show in a way that it didn't really feel like it was necessarily still of a piece. You've got a very clear distinction, I think, between RTD and then Moffat and then Chibnall as well. It's very much at once the same show, but there wasn't really any kind of consistency. So bringing back people like Jack, I think, is a great way of making it feel like more of an ongoing thing.
Well, it's kind of validating the Doctor, because obviously Jack's had these adventures with previous incarnations, and he recognises Jodie's interpretation as the Doctor as well. So that's just, reaffirming that.
Yep.
In a similar way to when they did it all the way back in the 60s with Troughton, when they quite rather niftily used the Daleks to confirm that he was the Doctor.
Clever. Yes. Do you think that'll convince all the angry men on Twitter that Jodie really is the Doctor?
No, I would think not. No, sadly.
Never mind.
Sadly, but unfortunately for them, because COVID is slowing everything down, if she does decide she wants to leave, it's going to be a while before anyone else comes along.
Yeah. Never mind. So, So, what are we going to be talking about today then with Timo Peach?
Well, in my infinite wisdom, all the way back in, I want to say June, back in the height of lockdown, I had the idea of doing a Christmas special, because that's what you do in the height of summer.
Merry Christmas!
When you're in the middle of a global pandemic.
I got excited there.
So I thought, why don't we do the Peter Cushing movie?
The Who Now What?
Doctor Who and the Daleks, featuring Peter Cushing as Doctor Who.
No, it goes. The 4 black and white photographs. Joe Martin, William Hartnell, Patrick Troughton, John Pertwee. Who's Peter Cushing? What is that? Is that canon?
It's a bit like the War Doctor, yeah. Yeah, it's canon. Everything's canon now.
Oh, great.
After the Timeless Children, yeah, it's fine. Everything's canon.
That makes everything a lot easier, because we don't have to remember all those lists
of things.
It really does. Oh, fantastic.
No.
Great. Well, then let's have a bit of Peter Cushing then.
All right, we will be back with Timo Peach after this.
Hello, darling.
Hello.
It began just as you see here.
Do you know what you have just done? You have transferred us in time and space, and I hadn't even set the controls. Now I don't know where we are. We could be anywhere in the universe, and at any time.
Yes, this is how it began. The adventure that started by accident, taking us out of this time and place to a lost planet.
Who's there? Who's there?
Come with us into that strange new world. I cannot guarantee your safety, but I can promise you unimagined thrills.
You have invaded the world of the Daleks. Every move you make, we can see. Every sound you utter, we can hear.
An alarm bell. They know we've escaped. They're cutting through the door.
Come with us to the petrified forest. Meet the Thals, the blonde giants who have survived the monstrous rule of the Daleks.
We must get to the city.
They could have scanners here, anything. I'm going back.
No, you're not.
We'll be killed. We'll never defeat the Daleks.
Remember, we are watching you. We can destroy you.
It's a trap! Go back! Run!
the people trapped by the Daleks. Dr. Who, the brilliant science professor. The young man who triggered off this strange journey. The professor's frightened granddaughter. And the youngster who inherited her grandfather's adventurous spirit. Dr. Who and the Daleks. Now you can see them in color on the big screen, closer than ever before. So close, you can feel their fire. So thrilling, you must be there.
Barbara, look behind you! Stop the countdown! The bomb will destroy the planet!
We are coming back to see you. We expect you to be here to meet us.
And welcome back, and I'm very pleased to say we've been joined by none other than Mr. Momo Tempo himself, Mr. Timo Peach. Hello, Timo.
Good evening, boys. How are you?
We're very well, thank you. And how are you?
Yes, I'm checking everything, and I seem to all be here and alive. For this, I'm grateful.
And we should say Merry Christmas.
And happy Christmas to you chaps too. I'm hoping you've decked the halls with far too much festive frivolity and baubles and things that flash.
Oh, of course.
And yeah, good. Because it aids everything. And if like us and the rest of the nation, you must feel it like it's nearly February because you've had your decorations up for a month. Everybody I know just decorated. One friend decorated 1st of November. And I thought, yeah, this year I'm on board.
Yeah. Well, I think it's been one of those years where New Year's Eve can't come soon enough, really, can it? Hopefully 2021 will be a bit of an improvement over 2020, but...
Yes, and on a completely unrelated note, don't get your hopes up.
I've got to say,
don't pin everything on a minute past midnight, 2021.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
I'm not expecting
Light
things
touch.
to get better. I don't really like Christmas that much, so I've rather than decking the halls with boughs of holly, I've just sort of smeared figgy pudding all over them. That's my concession to the festive.
Dirty
Yuletide.
protest.
I've sort of turned into Johnny Rotten.
Happy Christmas, everyone! A very happy Christmas.
Yeah, have a really great
Cheers.
time, everyone.
And incidentally, a very Merry Christmas to all of you at home. Timo, your nerdiness isn't quite encompassed within sci-fi purely, is it? Is that fair to say?
I am. I spend my life not quite qualified to be in any particular group. Overqualified for some, under for others. So, next to a lot of people, I would be the sci-fi nerd.
Mm-hmm.
In the nerdosphere, I am woefully, embarrassingly underqualified and know nothing. So I don't know where my home is. I often say that I'm very graciously offered day passes to a lot of clubs, and people tolerate me during daylight hours and nod very politely, and then they get on with the real club stuff when I go home at tea time. So I'm very grateful to be invited in. I'm sort of half nerd.
Well, we're very pleased to have you. Momo Tempo, the name may ring a bell to anyone who's listened all the way through our podcast, because I mention them every single episode, because young Timo here is the gentleman responsible for the arrangement of the Doctor Who theme that we use on all our episodes. So just want to say thank you so much for allowing us to use it. It's fantastic.
It's a bit of fun, isn't it? No, thank you for using it. It was written. It's one of those things that if I ever rearranged the Doctor Who theme, as everybody wants to and nobody should, and everybody should, because it's awesome. But if I did it for your ears in a studio, I wouldn't have approached it at all like I did. I wrote it for Phonicon, a live experience.
Yes.
First cover tune I ever did back in 2013, and it really worked a treat in the room. We had such a laugh, and
really
we're gooning
did.
out to it.
I might have to see if I can get a link to the YouTube video on our show notes, because it is.
Oh, you should, because that is actually, in a way, the best ways to appreciate that arrangement of the tune. It was written for a big old knees up.
it really does capture the pure insanity of a bunch of, well, let's be generous and say middle-aged people having a bloody good time and dancing to a cracking version of the Doctor Who theme.
It was a great way to end the night, I seem to recall. So,
it really was.
Yeah, I felt very welcome there, as I do here. So I'm gonna have a slurp of festive nog, which is otherwise known as a cup of tea.
Yes, likewise. So I decided it would be a great idea to do like a bonus extra episode for Christmas, just to be, nice to our listeners and give them an extra bit of entertainment for Christmas Day. So I thought, well, what could we do? And my brain instantly switched to the Peter Cushing Doctor Who and the Daleks movie. Timo.
Yes.
What was your first experience of this film?
Well, Mark,
I know what the answer's going to be. I'm just going to...
I wouldn't like to launch in as barely a half nerd and clumsily, oafishly stomp all over hallowed ground for fans. So perhaps I'll reserve judgment until I've heard some other comments on how one is to view this colourful corner of canon. And on another...
Oh, he's saying it's canon. Do you hear that, Iain? He says it's canon.
I heard that.
I'm canon in inverted commas
because it was a lovely turn of phrase that I'm going to steal.
It really was.
But I haven't processed it intellectually or emotionally. Canon, you say. Let me just...
I was going to say that on an unrelated note, I thought we were friends.
Well, no. Usually during our conversations about the TV episodes, we'll turn to our guest and say, "Well, when was the first time you experienced this?" Now, young Iain from our team generally tends to turn around and say, "Well, I watched it this morning." But I think we can turn the tables this time because I'm fairly sure that Iain might have seen this one before.
I remember vividly this was broadcast. I say vividly, I'm in my 40s, I don't remember anything vividly, and it took me half an hour to put the password into my laptop. I remember it being broadcast on a Saturday afternoon in the, I'd say, first half of the 80s. And I remember watching it and thinking, well, that's wrong. Well, that's wrong. Well, he's not called Doctor Who. That's wrong. What is this? This is nonsense. And I wasn't old enough to know what it was. I wasn't old enough to know its place in the the universe of Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know whether it kind of predated the series and spawned it, or if it was just some kind of sideways piece of nonsense knocked up by some jokers in the mid-60s on a bit of a laugh, or what. So it confused me greatly, and I probably haven't seen it properly since then until I watched it this afternoon. Not even this morning, this afternoon, like an hour ago.
And what did you make of it, Iain? Go on, what was it like after that larger gap in your imagination?
It's not got better. I've got to be honest. It was
right.
Confusing and weird, sort of 40 years ago. Indeed, it was probably confusing and weird 65 years ago when they made it. And it was. I just found it. It's hard to think of a word for that, really. It's just it's an experience. In my defence, because Mark said we were going to talk about the movie on this podcast, and obviously if anyone talks to me about the movie, I assume they're talking about The Dark Knight Rises, which is the only proper movie that I know about. So I was here really to talk about that. I've got my little Bane helmet, and I've got my inflatable Christian Bale.
I've never heard it called that before.
Right.
But anyway, getting back to
we're going to
Doctor
struggle.
Who and the Daleks.
What, Mark? Tell us about when you first saw it.
Well, I can't pinpoint an exact year, but I'm sure I remember seeing it. I must have been primary school age, I think, and it was on like a weekend on, I want to say it was on Channel 4, but I could have been wrong. And I was just scanning through the channels and just caught the beginning, and I thought, that's Doctor Who. But yeah, like you say, it was all a bit slightly wonky. First of all, the doors open outwards on the TARDIS, which is ridiculous. I mean, come on.
Yes, they do, don't they? Yes.
And considering how they've got so much more money to spend, I'm looking at it with my 40-plus-year-old eyes now. They've got so much money in the budget, and to be fair, the Dalek City does look pretty cool, and there's some
Mark, let me
awesome...
stop you there. I know exactly how much money they had in the budget because I looked on the internet.
Oh, get you.
Do you want to know how much money there was in the budget to make this whole movie?
Go on then.
This includes buying the
rights.
I've
got my hand up at the back of the class. I know this.
Oh, go on then. Go on, have a guess.
Go on, Timo.
But I don't know whether it's right. I never know anything in class, so the fact that I think I'm armed with an answer here means I've got no guile. I'm shooting my hand up. I'm going, ooh, mister! I think it's about £150,000.
Oh, you're very close. The figure I got off Wikipedia, which is obviously no guarantee, is £180,000.
Wow. But does that include the marketing? Because it might be the marketing budget on top of the shoot budget. I don't know. Because they spent quite a bit of money on it.
Well, the marketing, I mean, because the poster was really good. That's my pros column.
What I was getting round to was, I think the forest looks pretty good. The Dalek City looks pretty good. TARDIS interior. Bit of a shed with some wires. That's a bit... Yeah, it's not...
Dear me.
Yeah.
I think it's full on shocking, that. I mean, we can try and be nice about aspects of it. I'm letting it slip out. It's because, it's Christmas. It's the end of a difficult year. Diplomacy might be wearing thin. But I think if you're going to go straight for the jugular and talk about the most important set in any episode of Doctor Who, then I haven't written down any superlatives, but it could be colourful if I had more energy. It wasn't great, was it? Really?
Well, I think when you consider what the designers at the BBC managed on, I'm sure, much, much less money, it does look a bit pants.
It looks like they booked gallery space for an exhibition, and the artist was a lot like me and hadn't done anything the night before, and panicked and broke into a mate's lockup and frantically hung things around and spent the last sort of hour writing prose to describe this exhibition as a confident work of visionary design.
Hey, look, it works in the Tate Modern. I mean, they chuck any old garbage in there and just say it's art, and people are falling over themselves to buy it.
Well, we can have an entirely different podcast over on one of our other platforms about art.
but this is not that.
I'm suggesting here that this is not that.
I think maybe they were kind of... I don't know if because obviously once they've bought the copyright, they've got the copyright, they can make it as close to the show or not as they want. But maybe they just made a conscious decision to not make it look like the TARDIS on TV, and make it look like something a mad old man would have knocked up in his garden.
Fair play to Milton Subotsky, who was the producer. He picked up the rights for £500.
He picked up the rights to
really?
3 stories.
I mean, I know it's 1960s money, but even so, that's still pretty good. It strikes me as somewhat odd that they make quite a nice looking TARDIS exterior, albeit with wonky doors, and then you've got a bit of a car boot sale inside, really. Just a bit of a shame.
So what's the story there, chaps? You guys might well know this, but Subotsky wanted to keep it very family, and that's why it's extremely sweet. Rather than sort of edgy and dark and grumpy, and the grumpiness was one of the secret weapons, really, of the original series of Doctor Who, which kids kind of weirdly like. But what was the thinking behind the retooling of who the Doctor was? Not just calling him Doctor Who, which seems like they haven't really watched the show, but the idea that he invented, that he built the TARDIS and he's actually human and all that business. Why did they do that?
There is a rather good documentary on the Blu-ray release called Dalek Mania, which goes into quite a bit of detail about the making of this one and the subsequent follow-up.
Now, I sat through that, and I was terrified to discover that it was made in 1995. My wife Caroline and I both screamed at the television, "No!" because it looked like it was made 10 years before then. It had its own production value issues, but I'm not here to judge those.
Yeah.
It was informative, but I still didn't quite get the idea from it. Why Subotsky wanted to retool, maybe I missed it, but retool who the Doctor was and just rework the whole story.
Yeah, I think the idea was that because they felt the American audience wasn't clued up to the backstory of the TV series, they didn't really want to saddle it with the whole he's an alien and explaining all of that. So
I see.
They decided to simplify it by having him be a slightly eccentric gentleman from Earth whose surname happens to be Who, and he's got a PhD in tinkering, and he creates this rather impressive time machine in his backyard. And they change up they've still got the three companions, but Susan, I think, actually probably works better in the movie because she is a child, whereas in the TV outings, she's the lady who's playing Carol-Ann Ford is someone in her 20s playing someone supposed to be in their mid-teens, and is very often treated like someone who's 6 years old. So I think that possibly works slightly better.
Do you know what? Let's get straight to it. I thought that Susan was the only grown-up with any adult sense of what to do and any courage out of everyone in TARDIS in this show. She was great. Yeah. She was clearly played by a young Jenny Shirt as well, which was excellent. Made it even better. And she was the only sort of protagonist in the entire thing.
And then you've got Jenny Linden as Barbara, and I think she's trying to out-coiffure Jacqueline Hill. I don't think she's got the do to outdo her.
Our Jen did go for the hair in this, it's true, and I think it's because she was given absolutely no other evidence of being in this entire film whatsoever. I was led to believe there was somebody called Barbara would appear in it, and I sort of completely didn't see anybody doing anything by that description, and I really rather felt for her because am I right in saying Jenny Linden's actually been in loads of stuff? She had a really rich career, turned up in loads of British television and film. Yeah. So this was a woeful underusing of her, to put it bluntly.
Having a 40-plus year career in movies, and the only thing she ever gets asked about is Doctor Who and the Daleks.
In which she basically didn't do any work. She had to turn up and watch everybody else get a few lines.
Well, I think she was on a hiding to nothing, really, because Jackie Hill does such an amazing job in the TV show, and she really does carry that first season. Anyone trying to step into that part is going to be up against it, I think.
I suppose it's a straightforward swap in, swap out, isn't it? Once you make the character of Susan have, volition and intelligence and curiosity, that kind of makes the other character redundant. So they could have divvied it out.
Speaking of intelligence,
50-50. Oh yes, let's. I know where you're going.
Considering you're not the biggest fan of Ian Chesterton in the TV series, Ian, what did you make of this version of Ian Chesterton?
I love this version of Ian Chesterton. I've written down.
Is this what you think the real Ian Chesterton is like?
I've written down. I prefer Roy Castle's prancing tit interpretation of Ian Chesterton compared to William Russell's oily ponce version. Obviously, I was going to sort of dress that up before reading it out on the podcast, but I fear that boat has sailed. I think one of my main, regular, repeated, and probably quite tedious criticisms of Ian Chesterton is that he's so joyless and dull and earnest and overly dramatic, whereas at least Roy Castle had the grace to have a bit of fun with it, and
he does bring that comic edge to it, which I think is needed.
I think it's needed. I think playing it straight, absolutely. I think he needed something in the kind of the quartet of the main cast. You needed something because everyone else is playing it awfully sort of kind of they're very small performances, very controlled and very Not introverted, that's the wrong word, but very, very confined and controlled, and he's the only one who's having a bit of space with it and being a bit larger than life.
Castle's also got the most, I think, the single most realistic line in the whole pantomime, where he says, "Well, what are we going to do? Are we going to say, excuse me, my dear Mr. Dalek, would you be kind enough to roll into this fabric cloak?" And the way he does that with such sort of mocking pantomime, I thought, that is a bit of the real world just broke into this ridiculous thing. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Plus, it's Roy Castle. I mean, it'd be disappointing he didn't break out his trumpet. We'd have all been happy if he had. It would have made as much sense as anything else.
Could have done a little dance routine.
I quite like the bit there where you just called him Castle. Could we just refer to everyone by their surnames now? I think that'd be hilarious.
I think so. Well, I mean, let's imagine we're still at school, chaps, and.
Oh, and on that note, what do we make of Cushing? I'm going to come to Timo first. What did you think of Mr. Cushing's interpretation?
Do you know what? It's like a sort of. All the way through, I'm telling myself, this is Peter Cushing. Yeah. This is the towering presence of Peter Cushing. And I was squinting, thinking, I'm sure it's somebody sort of in a vaguely, a not very convincing Peter Cushing mask. And it's not actually him. He had less presence, almost than Barbara. And that's saying something. So I felt he was, just... I think the most actually full realistic scene was the opening tracking shot of the two of the girl and the young woman reading sciencey books, and as it tracks onto him, he's reading The Eagle. I thought, oh good, this is going to be a Doctor Who film, and that's sort of where it stopped. Pete was going to be grumpy, but then after that he just I feel a bit fatuous spelling out that he had no presence and no apparent brains, never mind supposedly inventing a time machine. So I thought this was an inexplicably poor use of Peter Cushing, if I'm being honest. Am I allowed to... It's late. Am I allowed to say things so brutally?
You can say whatever you like. That's why we asked you on, because you're very erudite and you come out with some very interesting points.
What is the fan view of this film and of Cushing in this role? How do you feel about seeing the Doctor in this sort of way?
I don't know what Iain thinks, but my personal take on it, from what I see from people who love Doctor Who like we do, I think for the majority of people I see commenting on it, there's a general sense of affection for it.
Right, yeah.
At a remove. It's not proper Doctor Who, but it is a fun way to spend 90 minutes on a Sunday afternoon.
Yes.
I think
makes sense.
That's right. I mean, when they do a favourite Doctor poll and they include literally everyone, like John Hurt and the Valeyard and the fugitive Doctor, then Cushing generally does come plumb bottom, even what I would call sub Colin. Which is very low indeed. Sub Colin.
He's got to be relieved with that, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think you're right in that it is probably something, because obviously it's not Doctor Who. If you're going to refer to the space-time ship as TARDIS and not the TARDIS, it's clearly not Doctor Who. And when I'm able to breathe again, it took me about 5 minutes. I was on the floor clutching my chest, and then the Doctor called Susan Susie. I thought, what? No, I don't. This is so not canon.
I know.
But Cushing delivers a very, not necessarily an impression of William Hartnell, but he embodies that kind of bumbling, yeah, without the fluffs, obviously. But he's got the kind of sort of nosy, affable old man shtick, but without any of Hartnell's kind of dramatic beats or kind of headline grabbing
Hartnell will kind of turn on a sixpence and
Yeah.
get quite nasty at times, whereas he's much more sort of fluffy and lovable and avuncular.
That's a good word. Yeah, useless is the word I would use. I would follow I would follow young Susie into any number of scrapes because she had her head screwed on and was prepared to right, well, so you adults will still faff around in here. I'll go into the woods alone and get a solution to this then, will I? And talk to the Thals? Fine. You just stay here. I'll go and see if I can sort something out. She was great. She was clearly skipper of that time ship.
Yeah.
He was completely redundant. And also, I did notice, this is a slightly weird thing, but I couldn't help it. He walks around a bit hunched and bent over, but couldn't help admiring Peter Cushing's strong, shapely legs in his fitted trousers. He didn't look like a man who couldn't stand up straight. Am I right? He looked in good shape. Plus, he didn't act like a character who could get dressed anywhere nearly as well as he was. So,
well, he looked like he was cosplaying
anyway.
a very poorly thrown together Peter Capaldi costume, really.
Sort
in
of.
a timey-wimey way.
Just to bring it back to a slightly more positive note.
Yeah, sorry,
I
I
we're ragging on it
spiraled
completely.
there.
Although, you know, it's got its issues. How great do the Daleks look in Technicolor? Because bear in mind, you've got to remember,
It's
back in
true.
the day when this came out, we would only have seen them on a little tiny black and white TV set in your living room, whereas this is in super duper stereo magnoscope or whatever they want to call it.
It's in CinemaScope, yeah.
Yeah.
And they do the colour of this really says, look, you're seeing the Doctor in colour for the first time, and it's great fun. It's a bit Willy Wonka, actually.
It's almost like a comic book, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and for that, it was enjoyable. It does look, you know, there are moments of great spectacle, and the Daleks do look super shiny and rather impressive.
They're certainly a lot chunkier than the TV versions to that point. They're bigger and they've got claws instead of the old plunger. on some of them.
and they kill people by spraying them with Lynx Africa instead of an electric
I
death
know.
ray.
What a way to go!
Armed with nothing but Lynx Africa and a litter grabber, we plan to take over the known world, starting with Scarlet.
Well, they obviously did the thing that Roger Moore did in James Bond and had
Or a
their
truss.
Lynx Africa, and then
Oh, sorry.
and no, or a safari suit. No, not that bit. They had their Lynx Africa, and then they held a naked flame in front of it for the bit where they're cutting through the door.
Oh, yes.
That was very tense, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, they did.
I tried to take out
Yeah.
a spider like that once. It was a disaster.
Oh dear.
Yeah, that just gets them angry. You don't want to do
Yeah,
that.
no, don't do that.
But what I thought was interesting,
these-
actually, sorry, just to trample on the
Yeah,
point
no
you're about to make, was whenever anyone was watching a monitor, they were watching it in black and white. So
Yes, I
inside
noticed that.
TARDIS,
Yeah.
when they're looking at the scanner, they're seeing a tracking shot of the forest in black and white. And then in the Daleks control room, they are always seeing black and white footage of whatever they're spying on. And I wondered if that was a very clever diegetic homage to, the verisimilitude of the televisual broadcasts, which would have been in black and white.
It's very, very metatextual.
It's very metatextual.
I was going to quote that back, but I didn't write it down, and I've lost it. That was excellent. Yes, it was definitely that. What he said.
I thought the sets looked really good in the Dalek City, particularly that sort of rotating wall. I mean, that's massive, and all the screens and
Inexplicably
everything.
big engineering, wasn't it? Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I have a couple
Imagine all the
of
guys, the stagehands behind, rotating that. I mean, Jesus.
So I have a couple of points on the
Health and
Dalek
safety gone
City.
mad.
I thought those kind of pink plastic sheeting walls looked slightly vaginal. And why did the Daleks design lifts that could only fit one Dalek at a time? That seems... because, we
I think they prefer their own personal space.
do you think that's what it is?
It was a
Yeah.
It was a Dalek paternoster, and I was disappointed we didn't see them coming down the other side upside down. Or they'd gone all the way over the top. That was. I think there's like an extra
They missed
on
a
the
trick
TV
there,
on the
didn't they?
Blu-ray
Yeah.
where they show that.
I don't know. It felt like a bit of a flaw. But then again, when they're outside trying to, or when Ian Chesterton's outside and he's trying to open the door, there's those kind of three weird sculptures, and again there were some interesting sculpture-esque things on some walls here and there, and it was just enough to kind of suggest that there was more to the Daleks than extermination and plotting. that they might.
It shows that they celebrate Christmas. They had their Christmas trees out front, and then if you notice when you're going down the corridors, you've got Ian's favourite pink wall on one side, and then you've got these very shiny. I suppose I don't know what they're meant to be. Sort of decorative things up on the walls that look a bit like Christmas decorations.
I thought they looked a bit like Quality Street.
Oh yeah.
Yes, there were giant Quality Street wrappers, and it's surprising how arts and crafts, the sort of robotic fascist half of Skaro is.
I've got the bloody
I was
nougat
surprised at how homely
parfait
it was.
again.
I've never liked soft centres.
Who's put figgy pudding on the walls?
That's a very neat callback to when Iain sits on the soft centres at the beginning.
Yes, and I definitely did that deliberately.
Yeah.
I did. There is one shot where I thought, "Ooh, that actually does look quite affecting," because obviously they were playing with the colour, so bright red Dalek, bright black Dalek. You know what I mean? Shiny. It looked really good.
Yeah.
A bit sort of
really
Flash Gordon and other things.
Yeah.
But there was one shot when the Daleks come out past their sort of angular Christmas trees, and the shot's looking up the kind of the rockscape, and they come out. There's only 3 of them, but it's this beautiful super wide shot, and they come as a sort of phalanx and speak out over the forest and the desert. And I did think that's just the beginning of something quite theatrically scary going on there, where you do see a more Nazi-like aspect to them. They still had a hint of Dalek scariness going on there every now and again,
that was
despite
a cool
the kind
moment.
of pop art colours. It was, it's I really like that shot.
I couldn't quite understand what was going on when the mountain kind of split in two and sort of slid apart when they were. Is that some sort of defence mechanism, or
It was just definitely quite Thunderbirds.
It was a bit, wasn't it? I didn't know if they were planning on having some sort of rave or something, where the white lights behind were going to start pulsing to the beat of the 60s music.
Oh, God, yeah. Maybe a Dalek DJ was going to come out and throw some shapes.
Nice.
Yeah, you could plug into his Ableton directly, just kind of a USB straight from one of the ping pong balls into one of the hemispheres straight into his Ableton deck, and he's away. Just
like that gig they played at the Atlantis in Dubai, but slightly different desert setting.
A post-nuclear desert setting.
Yes, well, again, very similar to when they played in Dubai, but I've just realised what we were I think quite dismissive of Barbara, saying she didn't have anything to do in this, and you're both forgetting where she had to pick up a handful of what can only be described as human feces and smear it over the Dalek's eye stalk, much the same way that I've done here with,
shade of brown,
with
wasn't
figgy
it?
pudding. Yeah, it was. That was really unnecessary. I think if you're going to go to all the trouble of having a Technicolor film and making, as we've said, the Daleks look so stunning in those bright primary colours, don't have something that looks like poo.
Yeah, I thought she was going to put it in her hands in clock.
I think it might have been the coffee flavoured Angel Delight that was big then.
Was it big on Skaro? I thought it was just big in sort of Tesco.
Yeah, but timey-wimey. Let's not get into it. It's too complicated.
It's true. Yeah, the whole Angel Delight can of worms.
We don't want to. That's another podcast again.
Is it though? Is it really? I know everyone started a podcast this year, but I mean, really, is there an Angel Delight? Yeah, there probably is. So, what was my next point? When did you get bored of the Daleks talking to each other very slowly?
Before they'd even come on screen. It's the most it probably is this it's up there as a candidate for the most tortured exposition dialogue ever delivered in film.
It really is.
Bear in mind, they've taken a 3.5-hour epic TV serial and condensed it down into 90 minutes, so there would have been a lot more Dalek talking if you just played the whole thing out.
But it never felt like a problem on TV, did it? It never kind of grating is the wrong word, because that's the one thing it is. But it was never quite as annoying. But in this film, for some reason, there were just large expanses of time where I was just sitting there going, get on with it, stop jabbering on at each other. Go.
I don't know if they would have seen the second Dalek story on the TV by the time they were making this, but I seem to remember the Dalek voices in the first televised story are not quite what we kind of remember them to be. I think they're still kind of figuring it out, so maybe that's why they come across in that way. But yeah, it's not fast-paced, lightning sort of dialogue. Is it?
It's not. The thing is, although I've sort of made loads of disparaging comments here and been very blundering around in the toy shop, I sort of also feel I kind of don't want to analyse this like a normal film. It's so in its own world and utterly inexplicable as a production, and was still massively successful because of this bubble of Dalek mania that had really blown up at the time. That in a way to then say, well, I think they could have trimmed the Dalek exposition a little, seems to be like, no, you're missing the whole. It's just, it is what it is, and watch it or go home. You know what I mean? I almost don't want to. Why? I'm not gonna have a Star Trek Discovery pulling my eyes out kind of discussion about it, because it seems like it sort of would miss the point. That it just was this, for a lot of people at the time, this big bubble of joy that defies normal critical analysis.
You're entirely right. I mean, no, if you were an 8-year-old in the cinema watching this in the last third of 1965, you would have thought this was the best thing ever. But if you're a tired man watching it in the afternoon in between working and drinking wine and smearing figgy pudding all over the walls, it just went on. I'll tell you what, though, in counterpoint, I'll tell you what I thought was absolutely brilliant in this film. There was, I think, 2 or 3 occasions where someone was punched in the face, and I think the face punching was really good.
Yeah, it's quite at odds with the rest of it, isn't it? When the Thals say, no, we couldn't possibly get it. We're a peace-loving, travelling troupe of Bauhaus performers. We couldn't possibly get into thuggery. Just in a heartbeat, punch in the face. Yeah. I quite like that, which brings us neatly, surely, into talking about the Thals.
The leader was very plummy, wasn't he? He was very, very, very RP.
Yeah, Barry Ingham. I thought they were all. I really liked listening to them. Actually, I thought their RP was, or sort of RADA trained tones were beautifully understated, and I quite liked it when they brought, despite the way they looked, they brought a sort of note of gravitas to the whole thing.
Well, you just reminded me of. Something from the Dalek Mania documentary. They were speaking to the leading lady, and she was saying about how she watched the movie for the first time, and she hadn't been available to do any of the ADR for dubbing her voice back on, so they just got someone else in. So she's left watching her performance on the screen with a completely different voice coming out of her mouth, which must be quite unsettling.
Yes, I felt for her when she said that, but she was tied up elsewhere. So
that's right. She says at one point, I turned to the director and said, "Whose awful voice was that?" And he just turns around and says, "Well, I thought it was your awful voice." Touche.
Ouch!
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Who'd be an actor? The indignity of it all from beginning to end.
Quite. We haven't touched on the music yet. Because obviously they don't use the Doctor Who theme either, which is a bit of a surprise if you're coming to it completely cold. You think, oh, well, you can sit down, watch a bit of Doctor Who. The first thing you expect to hear is that amazing Doctor Who theme, and you don't. You get a very 60s sounding intro. Any thoughts there, Timo, seeing as you're a musician?
We were struck dumb by just how odd it was to start an episode of Doctor Who with that. Now, don't get me wrong, I think in and of itself, especially as they played it quite a bit, that theme did become...
Yeah.
It was rather catchy. I rather liked it. And Barry Gray had something to do with it, which They said he did electronics. It sounded like he'd done more of the tunes. So I liked the music in a completely separate parallel universe to watching anything to do with Doctor Who. Again, I'm stating the obvious. I'm being very gauche by saying that out loud. But the main thing was just how strikingly strange it was to not have that as the atmosphere to open it up. And suddenly it was just entirely something else. I think maybe that Subotsky had just thought the first thing to go is the music because it's just too scary. It felt that way.
It's strange because I think they mention in the extras on the Blu-ray that in America at the time, Hammer was seen as for kids, which seems very strange to me. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So that was one of the reasons why they were kind of taking the angle of going for Doctor Who, because that was in that same sort of wheelhouse, because the production company it was Amicus, wasn't it? But it linked in with another company that was helping to finance, and
that's right.
were also, am I right in saying they were linked with Hammer in some way?
Well, wasn't Subotsky did he do something with Hammer? No, he set up Amicus, but did he have something to do with, or was it the fact that Cushing had done so much with Hammer that they wanted to distance?
I'm just clutching at straws now, to be honest.
Yeah, I would have done more research if I knew it was going to get this technical. I should have known. With your standard of broadcasting, I should have made sure I'd done some homework and brought it with me.
Did you like the lava lamps in the Dalek control room?
Oh yeah, I love a lava lamp. Me.
I reckon there was probably I couldn't see it because I was watching it on quite a small screen, but that if there were lava lamps, there was probably a half-eaten pizza under one of the machines as well, and maybe a giant spliff knocking around on the window.
That's probably the height of technology in 1965. It's probably very futuristic and spacey.
It certainly did lend it a certain kind of trippy, sort of Austin Powers-y kind of 60s air of brilliance, didn't it? Which was what I was hoping this film was going to turn into. About the three-quarter way mark, I was thinking, oh, let's get Shagadelic, let's have a bit of a laugh. But no.
It didn't go weird enough, did it? It should have really, especially with the Thals. They came dressed for that night fight, and then it didn't happen. They didn't get the giant lava lamp. But there's that shot that again, another example of the cinematography in this was that shot. It's a sort of slight tilt up at Susan sitting. I mean, it's the most beautifully bizarre still that also looks beautiful. It's young Susan sat on a bar stool on a kind of 60s gin bar with a whole phalanx of lava lamps, with a Dalek to the right of shot, dictating to her while she takes notes. With a biro, with a Dalek biro.
Yeah, it's a very high-tech biro, because to make it spacey, they put a gold ball on the end.
They put a gold ball on the end, which didn't go up and down. But it was also a beautiful shot. It's a really nice, the warm colours, and it's that still would make a really bizarre, interesting poster. And
I think when Iain and I spoke to Nick Pegg about the TV version, one of the few things we found to really nitpick about was they had a whole episode where it just seemed to be a group of men jumping across a chasm that was all of half a metre wide, and I felt that was slightly better realised in the movie version.
Better realised?
Yes.
Wow. I haven't seen the television version. I noticed, conspicuous by its absence, was the chasm they were actually jumping across. They kept it navel height up every time they jumped. Do you know what? And that does bring me to the other point we felt all the way through. What we were actually watching was a quite expensive version of The Adventure Game.
I used to love The Adventure Game. Yeah.
At any point, Leslie Judd could have appeared demurely, and it all would have fallen into place.
Yeah. John Craven would have just wandered round the corner with his Drogna.
Yeah,
but I'll tell you what. The sequence where they leap the chasm, and I'm doing that chasm in the biggest air quotes I've ever done. That was a lot better. That was tighter. It was less laborious. But how long did they spend climbing that sodding mountain? I mean, that sequence
They'd
went
obviously
on...
spent a lot of money on the plate shot, so they wanted to get their money's worth out of it.
The plate shot looked very expensive.
It really
it
did.
looked like a real... I mean, it looked like they'd actually painted a full-size plate behind the mountain. And they were going, look, it took a team of 10 matte paint artists 2 weeks to do this. We're going to show it a lot. I thought the Thals had a magnificent presence all the way through. And I liked the fact that they were sort of a performing troupe, really, and just how, especially the scene, again, I shouldn't be picking the dialogue here, but I thought it was sort of beautiful, the way we've got absolutely, literally says, we've got absolutely no reason not to completely trust these people who we haven't even seen their most recent form of, and they might look like a Nazi tank when we get there, and might knock the edge of our enthusiasm a bit, but nonetheless, we should plough on and completely take all our fruits to them as an offering of goodwill, and everything should be fine.
I mean, you really want them to die, don't you? When they're...
Well, Timo, actually, I think you'll find if more people were like the Thals, then the world would be a better place.
I do agree. If everybody were, absolutely. And that's what I sort of liked them for that. I sort of wanted to move amongst them afterwards and live with the Thals. So, yeah.
Well, unless anyone else has got anything else to say about the movie, I think we ought to just wrap it up and give it a score. So I am going to come to Iain first. What are we going to give this one out of 10?
Well, so my score is not canon because the film is not canon. I'm going to give it a 5.
Okay. Not the worst, but not the best. I think that's pretty fair. I think you will find, actually, after The Timeless Children, that it is canon now, so...
oh, God.
Yeah.
I haven't thought of that.
Sucks to be you, Iain.
Oh, no.
Yes, but I was going to mention this earlier, that it's canon in the most beautiful way because of that, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And actually, watching it, I was thinking, if in the universe of Who, they'd heard about him... on the TV and made a movie about the Doctor, it absolutely would have looked precisely exactly like the film we've got. And so actually from that point of view, it deserves the very highest score.
Stephen Moffat was desperate to have, I think it was, he wanted to have posters in the Black Archive when they did the Day of the Doctor. But unfortunately they couldn't do that. I think it was a rights thing.
That is such a shame. They should have done. That would have been beautiful.
Timo, what would you give this out of 10?
If you're scoring it as a piece of film production, I'd be generous to give it a 2.
Wow.
If you're scoring it as a curio in the world of Doctor Who in the manner we've just described, then well, it's got to get all the marks, doesn't it? It completely nails it. So it depends which multiverse slither you're in. It's either truly awful beyond words, or if you're not a blundering, careless oaf like me, it may be something very special indeed and gets a 10.
Well, that's a good way of hedging all your bets there. Well done.
It really is. I couldn't be hedging them more, could I? And I think I've failed at everything.
I am going to give this a 6. Partly because I've also seen the sequel, which I actually like quite a bit more. But it's fun for what it is. It's a Sunday afternoon thing. You just sit down, turn your brain off, enjoy the Daleks in Technicolor, and just have a bit of fun. So it's, it is what it is. So anyway, that's what we thought, and we'll be coming to our listener feedback in just a bit. But just because it's Christmas and we thought we'd give you all a bit of a treat, Timo, you have a song for us.
Apparently I do. but what have you chosen?
Well,
because you made this selection.
Well, here's the thing. There's a bit of inside baseball here for you listeners. This is possibly the episode that's got the shortest amount of time between actually recording and then you guys getting to hear it, because a lot of the stuff you've been hearing was recorded way, way back at the beginning of 2020 when we got into the first lockdown. So when I first had the idea of maybe doing this as a little Christmas bonus, that would have been probably around June time. So Timo and I had a little chat and I asked whether he might fancy bringing some music along, and he mentioned a Christmas song that he composed and shared the video with me, and I thought it was rather fantastic, so I thought it would be rather nice to share with our listeners.
Is this my accidental Christmas song?
It is, yeah.
Yes, and I have a huge soft spot for this, and essentially, and actually this summer I had to re-score it because my dear friend Steve Hollingshead, photographer who commissioned the original score from which this accidental Christmas tune is edited down. It's a photographic score, and it was commissioned for the 2012 London Olympics for the Mayor's Park there in Potters Fields, and it was on a big screen, a 30-minute mix of his beautiful folk portraits of London life throughout the year. And this summer, to coincide with the great get-together, they were commissioned to re-edit it and bring it up to date. And now, with 2020 eyes, this piece around the city in 80 festivals just looked like a tear-jerking reminder of life outside. In the middle of lockdown, we re-edited it in April. So I had my nose pressed against the images of this and his new selection for the whole half-hour score, which you can find online. But this is the original edit, which is still one of my all-time favourite things. It's vying, I think it might even win as the thing. It's right up there as the thing to play at my funeral, so bizarrely, and it's called 80 Bells.
New Year's Day Parade. 12th Night. Blessing the River. Ice Sculpture Festival. Charles I Commemoration. Chinese New Year. Grimaldi Service. Maslinezza. The Parliamentary Pancake Race. Reclaim Love. Waitangi Day. St. Patrick's Day Parade. Alternative Fashion Show. Holy Festival of Colour. Kurdish New Year. Druid Spring Equinox. Palm Sunday. Good Friday. Crucifix Procession. Hot Cross Bun Ceremony. Easter Sunday. Egg rolling. Easter Bunny Skate. Maiden Raising. Vaishakhi. Kite Festivals. Scooter Ride Out. St. George's Day. The Tweed Run. Jack in the Green Procession. Cavalry Memorial Parade. Canalway Cavalcade. Vaishakhi Mela. Punch and Judy May Day. London to Brighton Mini Run. Beating the Bounds. Beltane Bash. Urban Golf Tournament. Morris Day of Dance. The Prophet's Birthday. Pet-tastic. Norwegian National Day. Flower Show Final Day. Naked Bike Ride. Cart Marking Ceremony. Ratha Yatra. Dragon Boat Festival. The Nolly Rose Ceremony. Portuguese National Day. Ladies' Day at Ascot. Swedish Midsummer Festival. Canada Day. Pillow Fight Club. Kiesmer in the Park. Big Darts. Bastille Day. The Vintners Procession. The Chap Olympiad. Pride. This space. The London Mela. Gay Sports Day. Tamil Chariot Procession. The Carnival Notting Hill. Great River Race. Judges Procession. The Thames Festival. Hurley's Harvest Festival. The Great Gorilla Run. October Plenty. Hamster Conquer Championships, the Lord Mayor's Show, Diwali Festival of Light. Santa's Rampage Across London. Christmas pudding race, tuba carols, the pantomime horse race. Christmas.
And welcome back. Oh, that was rather lovely, wasn't it? Made me feel all Christmassy and lovely. Thank you, Timo.
No, thank you for playing it. I still love that thing after all these years.
Well, it's time for a bit of feedback.
I've got mail.
So I put out the call to arms on Twitter and just said, just how much do you love this movie? And we've heard from @PeteDoherty8, who said totally. Very succinct. And we have someone with a fantastic Twitter handle here. It's the face of Bowstroke Jack, and their Twitter handle is @prof_quite-a-mess. And they say techniscopically. So they're keeping it brief, but entertaining nonetheless. And the last bit of feedback I've got is from Mr. Cliff Chapman, @CliffChapman, who's a top fella. And he says, just a bit, see @Journey into Time. Now, you may or may not be aware that there was going to be a radio series featuring Peter Cushing as the Doctor, which got as far as scripts being raised, but never went ahead in the end. And they've decided to put them together and make it into an audio, which I haven't heard yet, but I'm quite keen to have a listen to that, so that might be worth checking out. So thanks for that, Cliff. Ian, who have you heard from?
So two pieces over here. Firstly, we heard from Captain Fatface, who says, to be honest, I barely remember it, other than that uneasy, weird feeling you get as a child when watching someone as naturally eerie as Peter Cushing. And Technicolor renders everything scary too. Which, I mean, trying to imagine that back through the eyes of a kid, yes, I can sort of see his point there. It would have very much popped, as we say. The other person I've heard from here is Andy Moore, who is on Twitter as AMMoore67, just to shroud his identity in that little meniscus of disguise. Daleks, he begins, in Technicolor. It's great. Shorter than the TV version, and certainly no worse for it. I think he's hit on something very powerfully true there.
Thank you for that, Andy. And Timo, who have you heard from?
Yeah, David Kitchen writes, in what is now, I think, building to a cavalcade of love for this film, making me feel ever worse for blundering in as such a senseless oaf after my first ever watch of it. David says, at the age of 5, this was a regularly borrowed VHS from the local video shop. Captured everything I loved about Doctor Who as a boy. What else really matters? I agree, David. What else does matter? Production value, story,
music.
Thank you, David. Everyone's a critic, aren't they? No, thank you all so much for your feedback. Really appreciate
did you hear what Tom Baker said about it on the subject of critics?
Oh, yeah, I don't think he was super chuffed with it,
he was talking about it when he was trying to get Scratchman off the ground. And they said, well, there were some Doctor Who films and they didn't really work. And he said, yes, but they were really rather poor.
Yeah, and didn't he add to that, you can get away with lots on TV that you couldn't possibly in cinema?
Something like that. Yes. No point did he call them whippet shit, for which I think we should all be grateful.
Well, yes, that is one of his favourite turns of phrase. Thank you, everyone, for your feedback. But before we wrap things up, I think we should ask Timo if he's got some projects on the go that we should know about.
My main project in December of 2020 is to go to bed and see what happens from there. I think we've all earned a proper lie-in just by getting through this year. I've had various things, creative things happening this year, which have been super. And so 2021 is a very open road. There's a lot of things I was hoping to finish by Christmas, and something just suddenly said to me, just pause everything and let in some space. So you can catch up with a lot of my work to date at momotempo.co.uk. There's all the sort of music and stuff there. I'm still working on the new LP, and I have been again today, and that goes on. Basically, that's what I do now. Yeah, still working on the LP that's 5 years in the making now, but was going to be coming out this Christmas. I'm pushing it back into next year to be realistic, so that's exciting. You can catch all the back episodes of Unsee the Future at unseethefuture.com, and I've got a really personally fascinating episode still coming up for that, which I'm hoping to put out as a special very soon. And also, I'd say as a last thing, while I'm plugging stuff I've been lucky enough to be involved with, it's actually plugging other people I've worked with. I was commissioned to do a little 8-part podcast for Arts by the Sea Festival down here in Bournemouth.
Oh, yeah.
Where I got to meet 8 fantastic local artists. Some of them are mates of mine, some I didn't know so well. And they took me all to sort of lockdown spaces that meant something to their creative journey. It's called Talking Distance, and you can find that linked to on my Twitter page and stuff. And that's me walking and talking with a selection of different artists and how to make art in crisis. That was such a joy to do in the autumn. I really enjoyed that project. I think, dear listener, you probably enjoy that if you've enjoyed tonight's chat.
Oh, that sounds great. I think we'll put some links in our show notes so that anyone who's interested can just click on that and go straight to it. Well, it just leaves us to thank Timo once more for coming on and being a fantastic guest for our Christmas special.
Thank you very much for inviting me on, boys. You know, when you let that riffraff in to a carefully curated atmosphere, anything happens. So thanks for putting up with me, dear listener, and I hope you've enjoyed the show. Thanks, chaps, very much.
Oh, well, that was excellent fun. That was a really good chat. Timo's even more erudite and urbane than I thought.
I know, you should meet him in the flesh. He's uber stylish and just a lovely, lovely man.
Oh, well, thank you.
Makes you sick, doesn't it?
It does. It makes me. There's a little bit of mince pie lodged in the back of my throat. That's because I've been eating too many mince pies. But that was a really good chat, and thank you, Timo, for joining us on our Christmas special episode.
And thank you to all our listeners for tuning in each episode. And we really appreciate you subscribing and listening. And we love hearing from you guys. So keep on tweeting us, leave us your feedback, drop us some audio. We do enjoy hearing your thoughts on the episodes that we're covering.
Yeah, it's one of the great things about this show is the way that we get so much feedback and we get everyone's kind of nostalgia for these adventures that we're talking about, and it just makes it all the more exciting. So thanks to everyone. If you haven't got in touch before, get in touch now. I mean, not now, it's Christmas, you know, you're probably drunk. But in the near future, when you see us put out, you know, a little message on Twitter saying, we're going to be talking about this story, why not just, you know, share your brains?
Absolutely. So it just leaves us to say Merry Christmas and thanks again for listening, and we are going to play out with a piece of music from regular writer-inner Mr. Andy Moore.
Ooh, and what is this?
Well, he goes under the name of The Modest, and it's a cover version of the old Go-Go's 60s Doctor Who themed Christmas hit, I'm Going to Spend My Christmas with a Dalek.
Oh, I love that.
It's great, isn't it? He's raising money for a charity as well, which seems appropriate this time of year. And the charity he's raising the money for is Action for Children. I'll put a link in the show notes so that if you do want to drop a few quid in, that would be really great.
£12.
We're going to play you out with Andy and the Modest. Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
Gonna spend my Christmas with a Dalek and hug him underneath the mistletoe. And if he's very nice, I'll feed him sugar spice and hang a Christmas stocking from his big lead toe. And when we both get up on Christmas morning, I'll kiss him on his chromium-plated head and take him in to say hi to Mum and frighten Daddy out of his bed. Merry Christmas,
Merry Christmas,
Happy Christmas,
Happy Christmas,
Merry Christmas,
Merry Christmas
to you.
I wish to be your friend. Please may I have some more plum pudding and custard.
I'm gonna spend my Christmas with a Dalek, and if I make him happy he will stay. He'll go and twiddle his eye, and then my little Dalek will say, Merry Christmas,
Christmas tree,
Happy Christmas,
mistletoe,
Merry Christmas
Merry Christmas.
to you. Merry Christmas,
I love you,
Happy Christmas,
you love me,
Merry Christmas
Merry Christmas.
to you. Merry Christmas,
More plum pudding,
Happy Christmas,
more custard,
Merry Christmas
Merry
to
Christmas.
you.
Unlimited rice pudding.